Auzubillahiminashaitanirrajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum viewers. I'm your host Faizan Akwi with a prayer. May Allah keep you all safe, healthy, blessed, and keep you in under His special refuge in all manners, inshallah. Today, the topic we are about to discuss is related to personality of Imam Khomeni rahmatullah alayh, who is an inspiring figure in Islamic world. So we will try to understand how he is different from other leaders in Islamic countries, among Islamic countries, and how what are the personality traits that make Imam Khomeini, and he is obviously the first supreme leader of Iran, and who served from 1979 until 1989. So we will try to understand his personality and see what we can acquire from his personality, and what are the personality traits he has that help him stand out from all the people around the world. So we'll move on to our special guest who will shed some light on his personality. We do have Brother Ali Salam from Basira. He is a very he is working as a political analyst as well. So we will welcome him. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Ali Salam. How are you? And thank you so much for joining us today.
Wa alaikum salam. Nice to be back on here. Thank you very much.
So much. And we do have Dr. Inayatullah Indarabi, and we will welcome him as well. And it's really honor to have you on the show, Dr. Saab. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. Ali, I would start from you. How do you see, obviously, as a young political analyst, when you see the struggle of Imam Khomeini and the personality of Imam Khomeini, and the kind of personality traits he has? Because generally we see the habits you have that helps you stand out from the crowd. And what do you see so much inspiring in the personality of Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayh?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I begin in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most merciful to all of the creation, as well as the especially merciful to the faithful believers. Imam Khomeini was very unique. May Allah be pleased with him and all of his actions. In the world that he was present in, it was a bipolar world between the United States, representing liberal capitalism, and various flavors of liberalism that could be seen around the West. For example, in Europe, they had a form of liberal capitalism, but it also has a very big welfare state. Some people confuse this with socialism, but the European-style socialism is not the same as it was in the Soviet Union or North Korea or China. So many Americans who are very pro-capitalist, they'll refer to the European Union as socialism, and even some pro-socialists within the West will think that European states are socialist, but they're really liberal capitalism with a welfare state. So various forms of liberalism was basically occupying the West up until Berlin, when it was divided between East and West Germany and the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union represented communism, which at the time was a kind of opposition to liberalism, thanks to some of the policies of Joseph Stalin, which had removed some of the social liberal policies of Lenin and Trotsky, which had, for example, permitted homosexuality and all these different types of things. But still, communism was a godless ideology. There are some economic flaws to complete and total state planning of economy, just as much as there are very many flaws to the absolute free market, no sense of morality, just go and get your profit. No matter how much freedom corporations have to intentionally create various mafias, like the big pharma mafia and different types of things, all the various wealth gap issues in the capitalist societies within themselves, and then the very immoral methods in which they use to gain resources in order to fuel their endlessly growing economy. So these two very dark ideologies, which may have some benefits in the worldly sense, but their immorality does not justify the worldly benefits, the economic benefits that are gained from either system, especially because not every single person benefits from these in the society. There are people who are left behind. And more importantly, there's more to life than economic well-being, to materialism. The heart remains empty because it is not filled with a real purpose in life. And the purpose of life is to worship the Creator and to shun the Taghut. And the Taghut is any illegitimate ruler, be it a worldly ruler, like, for example, the tyrannical regimes of America or the Zionist regime, or the devils that tempt our hearts towards sin on a personal level. Imam Khomeni, rahmatullah alayh, was the first leader to offer up a revolutionary worldview that addresses the problems of society both on a material level when it comes to economic issues, social issues, various issues in which people have miserable experiences due to the oppression that are associated with certain policies related to capitalism and related to communism. And he also addressed the spiritual issue of society through this revolution. He had created a very holistic governmental worldview, which is in line with the dreams of every single prophet, from Adam to Noah to Abraham to Moses to Jesus and to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and found a very practical way to implement it in probably the most fertile soil for this type of revolution to be carried out, which was Iran. It's majority Muslim. Also, the majority shares the same sect of Islam, being Ja'fari Shiism, and it's a huge land with lots of natural resources, lots of industrial capacities, because a weak nation that has no industrial capacities to produce weapons, to produce jobs for the people, to produce various consumer products, in the case that the entire world blockades it, a strategic location within the world as far as trade routes, whether it be the Strait of Hormuz or the Caspian Sea, or various, it was almost like everything, subhanAllah, was aligned perfectly in this land for this people and for this revolution. And as a human being, he was someone who reached the pinnacles of humanity, because at a very early age he became a mujtahid, like an expert in Islamic sciences, and he also was an arif. So he didn't just understand the very exoteric, rules-based aspect of Islam. He also understood the very spiritual and gnostical and otherworldly aspect of Islam. And then, of course, when you combine those two, then you get the ethical aspect. So that when you understand the rules of Islam that discipline you, and you understand the spirituality of it, which gives you a very transcendental state of existence where you're not attached to the lowly aspect of the world, that then translates into actions. And he is also very well known for having very beautiful ethics. That's something that we don't see in rulers and leaders around the world at all, hands down. Even the ones that we may respect a lot, for example, standing against America or anything like that, they're never going to reach that level. They're never going to reach that level. Imam Khomeni reached that level, and he set a new path forward, that if God is absent from a government, then the people who serve the devil will, by default, become the rulers of that society. And so he established this idea that a government should be led by someone who is connected to God. That doesn't mean that we don't have experts in various different fields to the different areas of the government. That's why in Iran there's a presidential system with an administration that has different departments for different aspects of society. But the guiding principle, the person who guides the society, the person who sets a vision for these people to then implement and put into their own specific area, this ministry or that ministry, is important that person be connected to God, detached from this world, a just and righteous person who has ethics and morality, and a person who understands the life of the saints that were sent by God to guide humanity. And so this was the first time that a revolution, a political system, was based on implementing a system of the divine. And so it was a big change in the world, and it's a positive change because if anybody before this Islamic revolution, if they wanted to resist against America and liberal capitalism, they by default had to go to communism, because even if they maybe didn't believe in it 100%, because many of these communist experiments outside of Russia or China, they put their own twist on it. Even, for example, Nicaragua, they mixed Christianity into it, whereas maybe in Russia, they were more opposed to religion. So, and by doing so, they would get weapons and money and support from those. Imam Khomeini broke up that bipolarity and established a new way forward for the oppressed who want both the material and spiritual well-being for their people against the oppressors of the world.
Thank you. Dr. Sab, I will move on to you and would like to ask you, how do you see Imam Khomeini Rahmatullah Alayh, especially an inspiring leader, obviously, the way Brother Salam mentioned so many aspects of his personality. Obviously, he was a faqih, he was arif, he was religious scholar and is a very courageous man. So what are your thoughts on his personality? What can inspire us even now to the people who read and learn about his personality, and where should we look for, what should we look for, especially the young people, what they can learn from him?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Imam Khomeini is, it's always a very, very difficult task to compare things. Most of the time, people make comparisons where the whole meaning is lost. So comparisons are very helpful, but they should be proper and real comparisons, otherwise the whole thing is mutilated. Now, in case of Imam Khomeini, it is a very unique thing to have happened. My thinking, my assessment is that there's a dearth of research in this subject, and this has not been so far properly explained what happened, because usually we take it as, we call it Islamic revolution. Obviously it is revolution, but words convey a meaning, and in our day and age, something which happened, what happened in Iran, the power structure, existing power structure was broken. It collapsed. A new thing came into being. Well, we call it revolution. That's it. But Imam Khomeini, he did not, essentially, he did not attempt a revolution. He did not do it for revolution. This is just this very important to understand the point I'm trying to make, and I hope I will be able to make this point a bit clearly. Imam Khomeini, in his writings, which are noted by scholars and in his own writings, Imam Khomeini had a very original idea of what politics in Islam is. And this is, as Brother Ali was saying about the world, how the world was set up, the blocks and the Soviet Union, socialism and all this. This has to be understood in the backdrop of what was existing at that time. A Muslim political thought had emerged, it was evolving after the fall of, after the collapse, after the demise of Ottoman Empire. The Muslim Brotherhood, Jamaat Islami, Mullah Maududi, so from so many places, and a Muslim political thought had started emerging and developing. About this Muslim political thought, some scholars like Dr. Kalim Siddiqui here in London, who passed away, I think, in 1996 or something. He was the director of Muslim Institute. He had a clear view about this whole Muslim political thought that it was basically a colonial influenced. It was not original. I mean, you bring up the notions of state, sovereignty, rule of law, and then you find Islamic alternatives to them. But the basic category is where did you bring it from? But I mean, this is always the question. Imam Khomeni had not come to Oxford or Cambridge. He studied Islam and he studied the Ahl Bayt version of Islam. And he did what ulama before him did not do. But that does not mean that he created something new or he studied something which others had not studied. He also knew Hazrat Imam Mahdi Azwajal. He also knew that he is in Ghaiba. He is not in the worldly plane at the moment. We have to wait for him. As other scholars did, he also did. But how did he come up with a proper theory, with a proper ideology to do what he did? It is his personality. And this, I must have told you before, this is a commonly known fact that there was a proper argument between what were called Usuli and Akhbari ulama. The ulama who said that we can only pass on the narrations of Imams to the generations and we can't take up a political role. But the Usulis were saying that no, we have to take up a political role. Now, what I was saying that Imam Khomeini studied the same thing, but he could come up with something as a result of which the Islamic revolution happened. And now, continuing the point I'm trying to make is that Imam Khomeini did not, he had no exposure to the political thought, Western political thought, all this which I said other organizations like Ikhwan Muslimin and others had. What he said, and this is very important to understand, he said that the prophets of the God, the messengers of the God, their basic duty was politics. By politics, he meant their basic duty was to organize people and establish wilayah on the people and become imam of the people and lead people from zulumat to nur. Now this is the crux of Quran. You can find it in Quran. It is you don't have to do any no fiqh is needed for it. It is very much in Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent prophets illa liyuta'a bi'idhnillah. This is Quranic words I'm saying. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent prophets with the purpose and nothing else but with the purpose that people should follow them bi'idhnillah, with the izn of Allah. Now creating wilayah and leading people, this is the crux of politics. And Imam Khomeini understood politics from this. So he led people, he stood up against Shah, and as we were just talking, he was an arif, he was a great mystic, he was a godly man, he was just, we could see him walking on the earth, but he was always somewhere else. When his plane landed in Tehran after the victory of Islamic Revolution, and he was looking down, someone asked him, a correspondent asked him, how do you feel? And he said, heat. He said, nothing. Imagine a person exiled from his homeland. Every one of us loves the place where we are born and brought up. He was also a human being. He had been exiled to Iraq, and the time had come when he had no place to go. Iraq had exiled him. He could go to France, and then he was returning victorious. So victorious that young people, 17, 18, teenagers, 20, young people, they had come to Tehran, and they had washed the roads. That on these roads, dirty people of Shah, and they have walked. We won't let Imam's vehicle to go on this road. They lifted the vehicle on their shoulders. Such was the reception. And someone asking him, "How do you feel?" And he's saying, "Heat, nothing." Now, was he really on the earth, or he was in some other world? So, Imam Khomeini, I was telling you, he derived his political thought, his politics, right from the primary sources of Islam, the Quran and the Prophet and Ahl Bayt, and above all, Imam Hussein. And he said that we are picking it up where Hussein had left it. These are Imam Khomeini's words. So it's an extension of what had happened in Karbala. So Imam Khomeini has to be seen in that light, in that perspective.
Regularly, I would ask you the way Dr. Saab mentioned, his mission. So, what are your thoughts on the mission? How he could develop that courage, that and rapid building, you can say, or the trust among the people, you can say. Like everyone wanted to follow him, and what kind of obstacles he had, and the kind of obstacles, how did he tackle those obstacles during his mission. So what are your thoughts on that, and what kept him ongoing even after those obstacles and problems he had been facing during his mission and everything he was doing?
For Imam Khomeini, it seems as if many of his obstacles and tests were similar to that of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. While today, Imam Khamenei, may Allah preserve his life,
Like,
deals with a lot of the obstacles that Imam Ali alayhi salam dealt with. So Imam Khomeini was exiled just as the Prophet Muhammad was exiled into the valley of Abu Talib. He had to deal with many social currents and educating the people and uplifting their understanding, because Islam was almost nothing. It was just a kind of empty shell. People mostly focus on the very superficial aspects of Islam. They got very sucked into the black and white. Is this najis? Is this okay? Yes, those are important. Yes, we should walk around, have pure clothes, and not be walking around covered in our own, filth and waste. But what about the najasa of a corrupt government that is based on the most wicked of evils and is allied to the most wicked, blood-shedding, usury-eating regimes on the planet Earth that are literally in service to the devil, if we believe that there is one? And if we do, then we understand that the evils of the United States and the evils of the Zionist regime are much deeper than what some of these materialistic political analysts will discuss. If they have anything bad to say about the United States, or if they have anything bad to say about the Zionist regime, they'll only scratch the surface, and they won't understand the deep evil that proceeds, and that the rope that ties these regimes to the devil himself. And we can see it with all their evils. I mean, who kills children? Who spreads pornography? Who normalizes pedophilia and LGBT? And who institutes usury as the centerpiece of the financial systems of the world? It's these regimes, and those are great, great evils, and that cannot be explained away with a materialistic understanding of the world. So Imam Khomeini raised people's consciousness to understand the true deep evils of these satanic rulers, and on the opposite side, understanding that there is a divine essence to human life, and therefore rulership should be divine. And so he had many obstacles, being exiled for many years, then finally coming back and becoming victorious, just as the Prophet ﷺ was victorious in Mecca. And of course, when that happens, then you have a lot of munafiqeen not just the MEK terrorist groups who maybe at the beginning were seemingly like they were going to come along with it before massacring people and committing acts of terrorism, which continue up until this day. There are other munafiqeen besides the MEK, and there were some who stayed within and put on the face like they support the Islamic Revolution. We have stories of people like Akbar Ganji, who would go up to women and take a nail or something sharp and use it to stick the hijab on their heads as a way of enforcing the Islamic hijab. Well, that's not the spirit of the Islamic Revolution, but these extremists and these hypocrites place themselves within the Islamic Revolution in order to try to give it a bad name and make people to push away from the Islamic Revolution, to push away from hijab. And the biggest irony is that the people who are the most extreme in sticking nails to the heads of women for hijab, now they're the biggest secular, enlightened, so-called liberals who support the complete opposite and are against the line of the Islamic Revolution, are against hijab laws, are against everything they used to pretend to stand for. So that they're always on one bad extreme or another in order to give a bad name to the ulama and to the Islamic Revolution. So he had to deal with a lot of these people, but in spite of these minority of people who were hypocrites, he captured the hearts of the majority of the people. And if that was not the case, there would not be maybe nearly, I don't know how many martyrs, maybe in the hundreds of thousands of martyrs, just people who went to the front lines of the Iraq war, let alone those who were killed as civilians by chemical attacks or bombings in the border cities near to Iraq, as well as some of the cities that were bombed and attacked more inland inside of Iran. And actually, many family members can say they have shuhada. This is a photo of my wife's uncle who died before either my wife and I were born. He died to liberate Khorramshahr. I could say he didn't die because he's still alive, because our martyrs are still alive. Only his body has lost its living states in this temporary world, but he's still very much alive. And there are countless many people like him who, in their purity, sacrificed their lives for something beautiful. Not just for homeland or different things like that, but as a truly beautiful system, and where people can truly thrive on a material level and on a spiritual level. If that was not the case, the world would have sunk into darkness. And he was able to grab the hearts of the masses towards understanding real Islam and towards understanding the return of Imam Mahdi, that we are preparing for the end of the Antichrist system, which had begun to take shape in the 1980s and especially in the 1990s, when America consolidated its power after the fall of the Soviet Union, and all these satanic rulers started talking about, we want a new world order, we want a one world government. Then the false flag attack of 9/11 and everything like that. The satanic powers are really trying to implement their Antichrist system with its one eye symbolism that you can see on the back of the dollar bill. But the Islamic Revolution has been the main and perhaps only thorn in the side of this agenda until today. And we can see that this system that they have tried, this new world order that they have tried to establish, is actually now cracking at the seams. The Zionist regime is practically on its knees. America is becoming so weak that it's basically an afternote, it's basically an afterthought. Nobody cares about Biden. He's old and senile, and his puppet masters are the ones that do most of the work. But Allah is really humiliating their political stature, both through Trump and then now through Biden, to the point where now the terminology of New World Order is now in our hands. Imam Khomeni is using the term New World Order to describe the kingdom of God on earth that Imam Mahdi will bring about. So Imam Khomeni laid all these things down and really inspired and has expanded the world. It's not just an Iranian revolution, and it's an Islamic revolution. He created a new political bloc where people seek justice through divine means, not through secular means or humanistic means or anything like that. To understanding that human beings have a material reality and a spiritual reality, and well-being should be sought for both of those realities. And any political revolution that doesn't seek well-being for both of those realities will eventually fail and not result in true human happiness in this world and in the next. So we can see the fruits of that in Yemen, in Lebanon, in Palestine, even when they're Sunni and they aren't on the same point of view as the Shia when it comes to Islam. We can see it even in Africa, in Nigeria with Sheikh Zakzaki. Even within the West, we have seen converts like martyr Eduardo Agnelli, the son of the most wealthy Italian billionaire. Also, his mother was came from a powerful Zionist Jewish family. He converted to Shia Islam, met with Imam Khomeni, prayed behind Imam Khomeni, who was president at the time. Then when he went back, he was stripped of his entire inheritance, which was worth billions of dollars, and even that wasn't enough. Some 10 or 15 years later, they killed their own son in order to prevent him from having causing any trouble to their family and their wealth. We see the grandson of Malcolm X, Malcolm Shabazz, rahmatullah alayhi, who was also martyred after he became Shia and became on this revolutionary path. So this is something that is open for all of humanity. This isn't just a revolution for Iranians. This is something that will end the borders and divisions between races and ethnicities in the world without this kind of like fake, there's no such thing as race that the liberal globalists are trying to present in order to destroy our unique cultures. Rather, we understand that Allah, as Allah says in the Quran, He created our unique cultures and ethnicities as one of His signs, but it doesn't make anybody superior to one another, and it doesn't mean there has to be walls between us, and it means that we should, in spite of these differences, unite as one nation under God, truly not as America, the great Satan says, but in the true sense. And this was something that Imam Khomeini saw very early on. People that would have laughed about what he said in 1979 is now coming true. The US dollar is on its last legs. The Zionist regime is on its last legs. Who would have thought that in only 18 years, Hezbollah would liberate South Lebanon from the Zionist occupation, which had Iran not undergone the Islamic Revolution, this would not have happened. Probably the greater Israel project that wants to expand from the Nile to the Euphrates would be in more of actuality than it is today. They would be in Lebanon, they probably would be in Damascus, and they would have sovereignty over that land, and they would oppress the inferior races, the non-Jewish races of that region, and then America would also be in the region massacring people. There would be no opposition to any of this onslaught and river of bloodshed that they have been creating. But the Islamic Revolution is the glimpse of light and hope in the world, and it is becoming more and more successful, no matter how many times the enemies within and without try to stop it.
That's wonderful. So, well, you described the mission of Imam Khomeini Rahmatullah Alayhi. Dr. Sahab, I would like to ask you the way Brother Ali mentioned so many aspects of the mission of Imam Khomeini Rahmatullah Alayhi, and how other people who got inspired from his personality and kept on following him, because the people who look for the answers to the problem of humanity nowadays, if they look inside the mission of Imam Khomeini Rahmatullah Alayhi, they definitely would find the answer, and they did find the answer, as Brother Ali did mention some examples from the people who followed him afterwards as well. So how do you see, Dr. Saab, how do you see that what Imam Khomeini really believed in, and how he reflected that belief or that faith or whatever you say, reflected through his action, and how he stood against the arrogance of, you can say, Shah and the Western world. So what personality traits or anything you think is the key factor in his personality that helped him become Imam Khomeini as Khomeini, or the leader of revolution, and for the people of all the people from Islam as well. So what are your thoughts on that?
So this is one thing that what Imam Khomeini ultimately aspired for. What were his deepest aspirations and wishes? They are brought out in some of his sayings after the Islamic Revolution in 1979. He, as he was saying, about his sort of comparing in this sense, because the comparison is again not possible here, but in this sense, comparing with the Prophet, as Prophet, he when he migrated from Mecca to Medina, he was then as a ruler of Medina for 10 years. Similarly, Imam Khomeni was the ruler of Iran for 10 years, the ultimate supreme leader. During those days, during those years, he said a lot many things which were then recorded in the press. Those days, the social media was not here, but uh, it was coming in newspapers and all this. And in those sayings, once Imam Khomeini said that I wish the whole world is filled with the love of God. I mean, Imam
Yeah.
Khomeini was ultimately a godly man. His basic attachment, and it was he felt always himself in the presence of God. So he once said that I wish the whole world is filled with the love of God. And during Iran-Iraq war, he said that I don't mind how many Irans are finished. Islam should be victorious. So this speaks of how beyond nation and what was his thought. But as a result of the movement, which is usually termed as Nahzat in Iran, Nahzat Khomeini, as a result of his movement, the Islamic Republic of Iran was born. And now we have on one side the thoughts and the deepest aspirations of Imam Khomeini, and on the other side is now the manifestation, sort of, not a full manifestation, but a manifestation in the form of Islamic Republic of Iran. This Islamic Republic, since it has been there, since it has existed, it has meant a lot of things to a lot of people. At the very basic level, it means Islam. And in this sense, there are people, individuals, for example, like me. There are organizations like Hezbollah who have really got inspiration from it, and who really understand what Iran is, what Iran stands for. But then there are countries like, for example, China, Venezuela, who think, yes, standing up to America is what Iran stands for. So Iran means so many things to so many people, but the common denominators is that Iran is is seen as standing for independence, freedom, honor, dignity, welfare of people, not being dictated by others. These all things, a kind of freedom and independence. That is what Iran stands for, and since I mean this I have told maybe I have told before also, uh, this is Iran's existence and survival by itself sends a big message. The message is that it's a state which is seeking people's material as well as spiritual prosperity. It is laid down in the constitution of the Islamic Republic of Iran that economic progress is only a means for the overall human development and for their overall success, which transcends this world. So this is a state standing on this. This is a state taking on what it is being subjected to as a result of this. All the sanctions, all the hardships, it is taking all those hardships and it is standing on those principles. So mere survival and mere standing of Iran is sending very powerful messages to the world. And one can see. I mean, this is anybody can observe, anybody can analyze. One can see that what it has meant, how things have been started changing, how things have started changing from the Islamic Revolution and what Iran has meant to the world politics. Now, uh, 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 I want to say, in this connection, I want to say that uh, usually, and it's a common observation these days that the status quo, the established power system of the world, the established world order is sort of is in a wobbly, is wobbling, is shaking, and we can see that so many things are emerging. So many populisms, what is usually labeled as populism. Populism is populism does not refer to any one thing. I mean, if I, there's always a word and there's always an outside reality. Most of the time, it's a one-to-one correspondence. But populism is not that. It refers to so many things. At the root of it, populism refers to something where people are not happy with what is going on. The governing systems, the overall political, economic, they are not happy with it. And they are showing their resentment, and this is called populism. And this can be for various reasons. Now, what I want to say here is that these populisms and these resentments, I'm sure that they cannot result in some ultimate transformation of the world. They don't have the wherewithal. They can't. I mean, only the Islamic worldview and what Iran represents, what Iran spiritually represents, not the just the Iranian state or the foreign office of the Iran. Now, what spiritually, what in essence Iran represents, only that can bring up a change. And Imam Khomeni has been quite often referring to the civilization of Islam, the civilization that will replace this materialistic civilization. It will be only possible by that. The other things, uh, uh, I mean, looking at the whole dynamic and looking at all the things, other things will not bring about any meaningful change. So this is what Iran, basically Iran stands for.
Thank you so much, Doctor. I would like to move on to Brother Ali. How do you see what is the legacy of Imam Khomeini Rahmatullah Alayh? Obviously, we are discussing it from the beginning of this show, but still, if we want to give final words to the whole, kind of discussion. So, what is the legacy of Imam Khomeini? Who has got the inspiration after him, like who is following his footsteps nowadays, for instance? And how was his family life, how a person could achieve so much in his small life, like he had a family, he had been a great leader, obviously he's great faqih scholar and all that. So what are your thoughts, final thoughts, because we are just left with kind of 5 to 6 minutes, so I want you to conclude overall discussion and final important messages, if you think, for youth and for anyone you think, like regarding Imam Khomeini Rahmatullah Alayh, and or from him to the people who are watching you. So I would like you to conclude the whole discussion. Thanks.
For me? Sorry, my connection got disconnected.
Yeah, I want you to, Brother Ali, I want you to conclude the whole discussion. That's what I'll do.
So it's hard to describe such a personality, especially for many people who are not Muslim, or people who are Muslim but maybe are not convinced. There are many non-Muslims who respect Imam Khomeini. It's especially among countries of the world that have been subjected to the worst brutality. They see Iran as a shining light, and especially because even some places that have maybe some material well-being, they're spiritually empty on the inside. None of what they have makes them happy. For example, Japan has one of the highest suicide rates in the world, despite having a very comfortable standard of living, little homelessness, little unemployment, um, and many other aspects of their life. They still have a high suicide rate and a lot of social problems. The woman in Japan has been thrown in the trash. Why should a man want to marry a woman which has all these kinds of responsibilities? You're dealing with another human being that has flaws and everything like that, when they can get a magazine or a cartoon. I was allowed, I'm sorry to even bring this up, but they don't have any of those difficulties. It really reduces the honor and dignity of a human being in that way for the man, because he becomes like worse than a child. A child has all play and no responsibility, but at least a child is not doing immoral things. At least a child is not throwing away his mother or the women of society. The Japanese society has really thrown away the woman, and the woman is totally alone. They don't even do na'uzubillah zina in that society. That's how bad it has gotten. And the Japanese birth rate is declining so much they may not even be a civilization anymore, even though they have a rich culture and history that was destroyed by the American-made Constitution, which implemented extremist version of liberalism and this kind of money-driven society, career-driven society. These people are not happy. They may have the latest gadgets and everything like that. They may have a relatively comfortable standard of living, but they're not happy. And the world will not be able to find any kind of well-being until they find a divine path, a path that is filled with ethics and love towards fellow believers as well as towards the average people of the earth, but filled with standing and rising against those who are wicked and evil and seek to spread wickedness and evil on the earth. And it'd be hard to imagine what kind of world we would live in had there not been an Imam Khomeni, had Imam Khomeni not acted upon his divine duty, as our esteemed guest had said, that the narrations of Islam were out there for everybody to read. But he took the correct interpretation that other schools of Islam were missing. Many of them, they were either on one extreme or the other. For example, maybe the Sufi extreme neglects all of the Sharia and they just say, feel God in your heart and then do whatever you want. That's just like a spiritual cover for egoism and being an egotist, following myself and my nafs and whatever it feels, makes it feel good. But then you had like these very stone-minded akhbaris who only focus on the black and white rule and is a cat najis or is a cat najis? Okay, well, you can wash your clothes. But how do you wash the evils of the society when it's being ruled by such an unjust ruler as the Shah, as well as the even worse people who the Shah was a slave and a puppet to? For example, the heroic efforts of Iran against ISIS and Daesh. What would be the state of West Asia and the Islamic world had there not been Imam Khomeni? There would be all these Al-Qaeda, Taliban, Daesh, all these Wahhabi terror groups would be the basically warlords of the society, not much different to what they did to Africa, making it just a bunch of making some countries or some regions of Africa a never-ending competition between different warlords, many of them who are propped up by the former colonial powers. So we really should learn from Imam Khomeni to have a spiritual outlook on life. The secular humanistic worldview will not tell who is the embodiment of the secular humanistic worldview, will not help us, will not put a stop to evil. And really it is, the Islamic revolution is the only revolution that has any life, that has any future to it. Communist revolution failed, and liberal capitalism is also failing. And Imam Khomeini brought about what is the true face of Islam, the face of Islam that the Zionists fear, the face of Islam that they needed to slander through false flag terror attacks, so that people associate Prophet Muhammad, Rahmatullah Alameen, the mercy upon all the world, with the killing innocent people by bringing down those towers. Imagine if the American people knew the truth about who were the real terrorists, the Zionists in suits and ties who blew up those buildings and everything like that. All of this is because they see that the real face of Islam is in the Islamic Republic of Iran. So they want to make sure that nobody's heart has a light switched on inside of it when they see true Islam being exercised in the Islamic Republic of Iran. And even as our guest said, it's not even a full manifestation of what the potential of the Islamic Revolution and Islamic Republic of Iran should be. It's only a small percentage of it. So with what beauty we see today and the shortcomings within the Islamic Republic overcome through Islamic principles, imagine what the society will become when Imam Khomeni and Imam Khamenei's full vision, which is based on the vision of the prophets, is carried out and implemented, and what it means not only for this region, for all of humanity as well.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much, brother.
Can I say?
Yeah, sure, go on.
Yeah, you were saying about the legacy of Imam Khomeini, and the short answer to that is that the Islamic Republic and the system of Wilayat Faqih in the Islamic Republic, that is the living legacy of Imam Khomeini. And that we must, as I said in the beginning, not much work has been done on this, but we must understand everyone who wants, who pray that Islam should be supreme and all, they must understand that it's not possible unless you have the teachings of Islam, no doubt, but unless you have a framework, a governing, a framework which in the real time space can deliver what Islam wants. And this is what Imam Khamenei, if you go to his web page, leader.ir or Khamenei.ir, you will see that these are his words. He says that Imam Khomeiни's big achievement was that he put in place a framework for Islamic governance. Otherwise, there's a lot, but you fail to govern, you fail to deliver, simply because there's no framework. Now he has set up a framework, and that is the living legacy of Imam Khomeini.
Thank you so much, Dr. Andarabi. Thank you so much, Brother Ali. I'm really honored to have you both on the show. It was wonderful discussion. There is so much to ask for, but the time is constrained, so I will take a leave from you guys. And I'll say to the viewers that, as our prestigious guest did mention, the mission of Imam Khomeini Rahmatullah Alayhi was mission of Islam, ideology of Islam, ideology of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. They worked for it, and they stood for it, and they followed it through, and that's how it has been achieved in the form of revolution of Islam, and all that based on Tawheed. If you understand Tawheed purely, you do the things as Imam Khomeni Rahmatullah Alayhi did. So I'll take a leave on this note, and inshallah we'll see you next week, and I hope you all have a great week, inshallah. Fi aman Allah.